Hey everybody, thank you for watching Leaf by Leaf. Today I'm continuing my Haruki Murakami read-through series, which is basically where I am taking time to read all of Murakami's novels from start to finish by original publication date in Japan, essentially to prove to all of my friends and acquaintances who have been thrusting these novels at my face for years and years now that I have given it my best shot. So I'm staying open-minded. I'm doing my utmost to come to each novel shed of predispositions and so on, and set on liking them and not disliking them. Because when it comes down to it, these types of novels aren't really what I go and seek out, but at the same time, it cannot be denied that Haruki Murakami is quite a presence in the worldwide literary landscape, so I also don't want to be left out. This is his 7th novel, published in 1992, South of the Border, West of the Sun. Conditions were right, man. It was Friday night. I had a beautiful cup of coffee and a slim paperback, roughly 200 pages, in very clearly and simply written prose. So, that analytical part of my mind, I could kind of turn off a bit for this one and be more cathartic. So, all that to say that conditions were right for maximal enjoyment of this book. Let's start off by saying that I was very confused. About halfway through this book, I felt like I was reading a parody of his novel, 2 novels before, Norwegian Wood, which if you go back and watch my video, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of Norwegian Wood, whereas all the others, I'll give back to a secondhand bookstore. But I couldn't help but see this glaring contradiction where, Murakami, when he catapulted to success and notoriety off of Norwegian Wood, he recoiled at that and withdrew from it, and he ended up writing Dance, Dance, Dance as an attempt to sort of go back to his roots with the Rat series and heal himself from the wounds inflicted by that publicity on Norwegian Wood. So, it was almost like he tried this realism and this more heartfelt story and this deeper writing, and it actually really did gain him a lot of attention and credibility as a writer, and he hated that, so he went back. But then he turns around, and with the very next book, he basically writes Norwegian Wood. Unfortunately, however, it's a very half-hearted attempt at that realism and at that same story. It's just really weird for me. The title, South of the Border, Nat King Cole, comes from a song just like Norwegian Wood, and the narrator is haunted by a childhood infatuation with a girl. That childhood infatuation becomes an impossibility because of some mysterious impasse. In Norwegian Wood, that was mental illness. In this, we have no clue what it is, because that, in Murakami fashion, he just keeps that in the shadows and doesn't care to shed any light on it for us. Hajime is like Tokuru in Norwegian Wood. He's a stock Murakami narrator. I'm kind of getting the feeling that we have the same narrator in all of his novels at this point. But in this one, it says he's in middle age, which I think it said was 37. So suddenly I myself at 35 am in middle age. It's kind of frightening and more Dante-esque midway through this mortal life. I don't see it that way. In this one, the narrator is irritatingly self-centered, and halfway through, like, just his outlook, especially on women and so on, is so it's hard to take in. I think because there are a lot of people like that, it's hard to face dead on. But eventually we realize that this is actually this is a rite of passage novel. The self-centeredness to this degree is actually by design, because we are going with Hajime on his journey from infantilism to maturity and adulthood. Again, the prose, it keeps wanting to have that magic that Norwegian Wood has, but it's mixed in this just sort of childish story, to the point where even the prose itself is a parody of Norwegian Wood. But let's talk about the redeeming quality. So the redeeming quality here is the metaphor for, like I said, going from childhood or immaturity and boyhood into manhood. And if we read these last sentences of the whole novel, these sentences are the only redeeming quality of the book. It says, "Inside that darkness, I saw rain falling on the sea. Rain softly falling on a vast sea, with no one there to see it. The rain strikes the surface of the sea, yet even the fish don't know it is raining. Until someone came and lightly rested a hand on my shoulder, my thoughts were of the sea." Okay, obviously out of context, if you haven't read it, that just sounds like, some kind of prose poem about rain. But really, rain here, it's a metaphor for rebirth. Earlier on, Shimamoto, which is his childhood infatuation who haunts him in this novel, Shimamoto has talked about how if you scatter the ashes of someone into the sea and it mixes with the seawater, then when it evaporates, goes up into the clouds, and then comes back as rain, is that like the humans coming back down, or humans whose ashes have been scattered raining back down on us? So in that sense, it's a rebirth of the dead, or a return of the dead. And she says this because the two of them, Hajime and Shimamoto, they go together at her behest to scatter some ashes. Well, he doesn't know that until it happens. In this true Murakami narrator style, he just kind of goes along with whatever and asks questions later, which is a really cool way to live. I wish I could be that way sometimes. But anyway, they go and they do this, and they scatter the ashes, or she scatters the ashes on the Japan Sea, and she talks about eventually how this was a child of hers who died a year before. Now, we never hear anything else about this child or who the father may be. Maybe it's this guy that shows up and gives him money at some point, which I'm still bewildered about what was going on there. Maybe I'll read it again sometime to figure it out. But anyway, I think what's going on here is she's talking about, that these are the ashes of a child that died a year before, and then, conjecturing that maybe when it rains eventually, that's the child coming back in a sense, and so on. And I think what's going on here is that through Shimamoto, and ultimately the consummation of the two of them, that Hajime has been looking forward to and haunted by for a long time now. I think what this is a burial service of Hajime's childhood and his infantile philanderings, and a rebirth through rain into his adulthood and manhood. So yeah, it's this really nice symbolism for that rite of passage. And luckily for Hajime, his wife Yukiko is one of the greatest doormats in literary history. So when all this comes to light and so on, and she basically says, "Oh, that's okay, no big deal. Let's go on. You've had your fun. I understand," and so on. But possibly this is also because she's grown up seeing this with her philandering father, so it just really is no big deal to her. So that is definitely the only redeeming quality I can see there, is that he works a nice metaphor with rain and rebirth. But besides that, it is such a meager parody of Norwegian wood that I will heretofore refer to this as Norwegian plastic.